Hey guys, so this week is going to be audio only. So those of you that have stumbled across this YouTube video, if you want to stick around and listen to the podcast, great. Otherwise, you can find it on your favorite podcast app. I hope you enjoy.
Coming up this week, the Volkswagen ID.4 completes the NORRA 1000. Tesla has a demand problem, but it's not what you think. Updates from this weekend's Formula E race and more. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 63 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answers to your questions about electric vehicles. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you like the podcast today, make sure you share it with a friend. Before we get started with the news this week, I want to thank our podcast partner, Titan Auto and Tire in Moseley, Virginia, for their support. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to TitanAutoTire.com. That's TitanAutoTire.com. Racer Tanner Faust has competed in countless long-distance off-road races, but after bringing the all-electric Volkswagen ID.4 home after the National Off-Road Racing Association, NORRA, Mexican 1000 off-road event on the Baja Peninsula, he was surprised. This was the first time that he and co-driver M. Hall contested a 1,000-mile race without a single mechanical problem. Jalopnik reports that the duo finished 61st after a grueling 5 days in the desert, which was a third to last out of all the vehicles that finished. There were 90 total entrants. But it's an important outing for the machine, which was the only electric vehicle entered in the event. Even well-prepared and established combustion engine vehicles struggle with events like the Mexican 1000, since there are so many variables that could see things go wrong. That the ID.4's only problem was needing to be pulled out of the sand on the first day is pretty damn impressive. Here's a little bit more information about the preparation of the car, which was altered for the event via VW's press release. They say, to charge the ID.4 in the wilds of Baja, the Volkswagen team will use a portable biofuel generator powering a 50-kilowatt portable fast charger. As the NORRA Mexico 1000 race will be run in loops due to the COVID travel restrictions, the team will attempt to complete about 98% of the stages in the loop without the need for recharging. While the 201 horsepower electric motor, battery pack, and drive systems have not been altered, the vehicle's power electronics have been given extra protection from the elements for off-road racing. The interior of the ID.4 was stripped of features such as the HVAC system and modified with a roll cage, safety racing seats, and supplemental screens for key data like battery temperature. The suspension was thoroughly reworked with rally-style coilover struts at all wheels and tubular lower control arms in the front and boxed lower rear links. The radiator was raised several inches to improve approach angles and cooling capacity, and additional skid plates were added to the undercarriage. Tanner Faust told Auto Week that the ID.4 didn't even require a tire change, let alone any other maintenance. And that's likely because EVs are less complicated mechanically than their ICE counterparts. Faust noted that their main issue was charging time. He and Hall could travel similar distances to their ICE counterparts, but they needed to wait longer to fill up the battery. The whole goal of the exercise is extreme environment testing. No, the average driver probably isn't going to be taking their ID.4 out for a 5-day desert sprint, but it's important to know how the technology can cope with high temperatures, rapid charges, and competitive speeds. This translates into other forms of electric racing like Extreme E. It also translates into a better, more reliable product for consumers. If the ID.4 thrived in an off-road desert race, it could probably handle asphalt driving in a Texas summer. The next planned off-road outing for the ID.4 will be at the Rebel Rally this summer, and I can't wait to see how well they do. It's nice to be able to root for an EV that finishes the race. Next, I want to talk about Tesla's big demand problem, and it is huge, but it's not what you would think. Tesla is currently seeing exceptionally strong demand for its vehicles and has already sold out for this quarter, Q2. Sources familiar with the matter told Electrek that Tesla communicated to employees that production capacity for the second quarter is already sold out with still almost 2 months left. That was to be expected for the Model S and Model X, of course, with the new versions of these vehicles having production delays, and that obviously would limit deliveries this quarter, but Model 3 and Model Y are still ramping up, and yet they are sold out. Now it's about producing and delivering those vehicles to customers by the end of the quarter and building the backlog into Q3, including my own Model 3 that I ordered. So Tesla, hurry up and get on it. I'm looking forward to that car. Tesla is expected to have a slightly higher production capacity this quarter versus the production record of last quarter, which was 180,338 vehicles. The restart of the Model S production and an increase in Model Y production in Shanghai and Fremont are expected to be the biggest contributors this quarter. Tesla did state in its recent earnings call that the company is experiencing something remarkable. According to Elon Musk, Tesla is now seeing a shift in customer perception of electric vehicles, and this has resulted in demand for Teslas to increase. This was notable in the first quarter, which is typically the softest in the year for the automotive industry. Musk said, quote, "We have seen a real shift in customer perception of electric vehicles, and our demand is the best we've ever seen. So this is, if you talk about what we're used to seeing, a reduction in demand in the first quarter, and we saw an increase in demand that exceeded the normal seasonal reduction in demand in Q1, end quote. So this is fantastic news. Of course, because it's about Tesla, people want to report on that specifically, but I would be really interested to see if this demand is across the board for electric vehicles and if every other automaker is finding that they can't keep up with the demand for their EVs as well. Next, the world of electric airplanes is progressing. There is a new 8-seat electric airplane that costs 80% less to fly than a conventional aircraft. 80%! The eFlyer 800 is made by Aerospace, and it's their response to the growing demand for all-electric aircraft that can deliver local and regional flights, but with greater capacity and capabilities at a substantially lower operating cost than traditional fossil-fueled aircraft. The eFlyer 800 is expected to have a range of up to 575 miles with 45 minutes of reserve battery charge for its motors, and an operating ceiling of 35,000 feet. The plane is projected to have a speedy ascent of up to 3,400 feet per minute, cruise at 322 miles per hour, and reach a top speed of 368 miles an hour. Bai said that puts it among the top 5 fastest twin-engine turboprops. More importantly, it will be flown at only 1/5 the cost of a comparable aircraft running on fossil fuel, with little noise and 0 CO2 emissions. The company is counting on high motor and aerodynamic efficiencies, which it believes to be twice as high as a traditional turboprop or smaller aircraft. This level of performance is expected to translate into 80% savings in operational costs based on evidence by its eFlyer 2, which already has $23 an hour operating costs compared to $110 an hour by a comparable plane. Standard safety features include a full plane parachute, which I didn't know was a thing, but that's really cool, and 2 wing-mounted motors, as opposed to only one mounted on the nose, and dual redundant motor windings. Uninterrupted power supply will be delivered by quad redundant battery packs. And yeah, safety obviously on an airplane is going to be super important, but even then, quad redundant, that is definitely taking safety very seriously. Additional features, depending on development and certification, could include supplemental power solar cells, an emergency auto landing system, terrain avoidance, and an option for in-wheel electric taxi to conserve power. The plane will not only be welcomed for private use, but could also be used as an air taxi and charter services. Ford announced this week the MSRP price range for the E-Transit they revealed earlier in the year, which is their new commercial electric van. It starts at $43,295 and goes all the way up to $52,690. The Ford E-Transit was unveiled late last year. Ford said that the E-Transit is equipped with a battery pack that has a usable capacity of 67 kilowatt hours. The company expects to achieve a range of 126 miles with that battery in an E-Transit configured with the low roof cargo. Obviously, there your frontal area is reduced, so aerodynamics would be slightly better. The E-Transit is going to be available with a choice of 3 roof heights, however, and 3 body lengths, as well as in cargo, cutaway, and chassis cab versions. The different configurations offer different payload capacities between 3,240 and 3,800 pounds. The battery pack feeds a 198 kilowatt or 266 horsepower electric motor. And when it comes to charging capacity, the E-Transit is going to be able to DC fast charge at over 115 kilowatts. Ford believes that it will add approximately 30 miles of range in 10 minutes and 45 miles of range in 15 minutes. When it was originally unveiled, Ford did say that they were aiming for a starting price less than $45,000. So this $43,295 starting price definitely fits that. Currently, Ford is opening a show of interest for the van on its website, and orders will open in July. Plans are that this will go into production in early next year. Uber, the ride-hailing app, has teamed up with a UK tech company, Arrival, to build an electric car. And it wasn't too long ago that Uber was actually promising to whisk you home in a fully electric flying car. But even then, they admit that such a contraption is many, many years away. So the question is what to do in the meantime. Well, obviously, work with the technology that is here now, or an EV car. Top Gear reports this week that Uber has joined forces with Arrival to make their own EV and focus on safety and convenience above all else. The Arrival car is due to arrive in the later stages of 2023, so 2.5 years away, but not before Uber drivers have had their say on exactly what they need from an electric cab, which is smart. Go to the people and get their opinion. That is very smart. The final design is due to be revealed later this year. Tom Elvidge, Arrival's senior vice president, explained, quote, "Arrival car will be designed around drivers' needs to create a vehicle that is affordable, durable, and desirable. We have had great success working alongside key partners to create our best-in-class delivery van, and we hope to replicate that success with Uber," end quote. And with the design still very much a work in progress, Uber has yet to say how fast or how far the Arrival car will go. However, it has released some renders on what the inside could look like. It's all very minimalist, with a modern-sized screen, a cup holder, and a smartphone holster flanking the steering wheel. Uber wants all of its London drivers to have made the switch to electric by 2025, with North America and the rest of Europe to follow suit by 2030. And that's a tall order given that some 30 million drivers work in the ride-hailing sector, according to Uber. The company also reckons ride-hailing cars rack up 4 times the mileage of the average family vehicle each year, so a mass switchover from liters or gallons to kilowatt hours could do our cities the world of good. And as a former Uber driver, I can't tell you how many times I wished I had an electric car. That being said, it would effectively kill the opportunity for longer trips if it had a range under 200 miles and didn't fast charge very quickly. For around town, honestly, it wouldn't be a problem to hop offline and recharge for 30 minutes or so. But for a long trip, if you would have to stop and charge, is the passenger really going to be okay with that? And if they're paying per mile and per minute, which at least when I was driving, that was Uber's business model. The passengers did pay for time as well. Are the passengers going to be paying for time if the driver has to stop and charge? Honestly, I love the idea of them going electric and designing their own car specifically for this purpose. I think that's fantastic. But I imagine that at this point, there's still a number of kinks to work out. Next, Solid Power is announcing the closing of a new round of investment worth $130 million led by the BMW Group, Ford Motor Company, and Volta Energy Technologies. Along with the investment, BMW and Ford expanded existing joint development agreements with Solid Power to secure all solid-state batteries for future electric vehicles. They wrote in a joint press release, "This investment positions Solid Power to produce full-scale automotive batteries, increase associated material output, and expand in-house production capabilities for future vehicle integration. The BMW Group and Ford aim to utilize Solid Power's low-cost, high-energy, all-solid-state battery technology in forthcoming electric vehicles." Doug Campbell, CEO and co-founder of Solid Power, commented, saying, quote, "BMW and Ford now share leading positions in the race for an all-solid-state battery-powered electric vehicle. Solid Power now plans to begin producing automotive-scale batteries on the company's pilot production line in early 2022 as a result of our partners' continued commitment to Solid Power's commercialization efforts," end quote. The company said that both Ford and BMW should use batteries from that pilot production line next year to test in their own electric vehicles. And if all goes well, it would be another few years after that before they can achieve volume production and get the batteries into production electric vehicles. So the race to solid-state battery application in the actual car is on. Of course, we've got Volkswagen with QuantumScape, Toyota and their progress, which honestly I haven't followed too closely, but maybe I should. And these guys, BMW and Ford, with Solid Power. Honestly, I still don't know how serious this all is, the solid-state batteries. But if they're going to push EV tech forward, it's really curious to ask, what will things look like in 2030, at the end of the decade? And it's really exciting. So that's pretty cool. And the last two stories I've got for you this week are about Formula E. First, great news for my North American friends who also, like me, love racing and specifically electric racing. Formula E is now one step closer to hosting its second Canadian E-Prix, and this time in Vancouver. And the city actually seems to like the idea and they're working with them, so that's great. This past week, the Vancouver City Council voted in favor of partnering with the Canadian promoter of Formula E, One Stop Strategy Group, as a way to support recovery of the gutted tourism sector. The prospective E-Prix wouldn't take place until July of 2022, next year, but that gives Canada plenty of time to get its COVID-19 situation under control and to begin revitalizing tourism. One Stop Strategy Group was also responsible for putting together the second Swiss E-Prix in Bern. The motion submitted to the City Council reads as follows: affirming support for Formula E World Championship event, including a conference focusing on climate change and sustainability, musical and cultural event, and the Canadian round of an electric vehicle race. The City of Vancouver has been approached by OSS Group, a private Canadian promoter of the Formula E World Championship, to host a 2-day creative business conference focused on climate and sustainability, 2 music concerts, and a 1-day electric vehicle race in False Creek in July of 2022. That would generate significant economic benefit to the city and support recovery of the gutted tourism sector. At this time, the preliminary track layout has also been approved by the council, which is great news, and it'll be nice to have Formula E racing back in North America again. This weekend, Formula E was not racing in North America, however, but at the iconic and most legendary Monaco race circuit. And if you're not familiar in the racing world with Monaco, it is honestly one of the most famous race circuits in the world. The Formula One series has run on this circuit since 1929, and it is widely considered to be one of the most important and prestigious automobile races in the world, and is one of the races, along with the Indianapolis 500 and the 24-hour Le Mans, that form the triple crown of motorsport. So very important. Very important track, a lot of history, and it's been called an exceptional location of glamour and prestige. The circuit is a narrow course laid out in the streets of Monaco with a bunch of different elevation changes, tight corners, and a tunnel. Like they go, I guess it's around the back side of the circuit. They go underneath, I think it's a hotel. So coming out of that, the drivers just get blasted with sunlight. I mean, it's really neat to see that, from an onboard the car perspective. And this weekend, actually, Formula E ran the full course, the same course as Formula One series, for the first time. And that is a really big deal because previous to this, the technology and the cars just were not ready for it.
Something that's very interesting, actually, is some of the commentary that I've heard about this year's race was that the Formula E cars are better suited for Monaco than the Formula One cars. And it's almost like Monaco has come to life now with with Formula E. And that is something that I think is spectacular. And it makes a lot of sense because the tight corners, there's a lot of low speed sections. So having that torque of the electric motor can just catapult them out of the corner so much better than you'd find in a Formula One car. So how did the race go? In case you missed it, you didn't see it or haven't heard. Well, there were actually 6 overtakes for the lead, with the reigning champion Antonio Felix da Costa only passing for the eventual win, and one of the craziest moves you'll ever see, on the final of the 26 laps. Formula E ever-present De Grassi, who progressed from 17th to 11th for Audi, reckoned it was correct to say that this had helped heal Formula E's public image after the controversial end of the Valencia E-Prix, in which only 9 drivers were classified as finishing. And a side note to that, they actually changed the rule on the allowed energy usage for the race because of that. And De Grassi added that the race had shown Monaco could be a good circuit for overtaking, despite the sentiment held in F1, which produced a procession on the street track. So, once again, Formula E is showing that they can race at Monaco better than Formula One. That, and like put on a better show. That, I think, is just spectacular. De Grassi continued to say, quote, "For sure, the race was very spectacular and people love it. I hope that the Prince of Monaco, Albert, and the race organizer, Automobile Club de Monaco, and Formula E puts us here to race year after year because it was just amazing. Even with everything after the pandemic is gone next year, or a little bit more in control, with more public, it will be even better." End quote. So I won't spoil much of anything else for the race. Definitely go onto YouTube and check out the highlights, because even the highlights, I mean, it's just, man, Formula E is just so exciting to watch. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go to a race in person, because I've been to motorsport races, with in IndyCar series in person, and that is definitely an experience that is very thrilling. But one of the criticisms about electric motorsport is that you don't have the sounds and the smells the way you do with gas-powered cars, and certainly that has to be true. But I've never been to a race myself to find out, and I'm so curious. So back to the second to last story, and honestly, with them going to Vancouver, maybe that's an opportunity for me to finally find out what electric motorsport is like in person. So that's all I have for you in the news this week. And I would move on to the weekly Q&A, but honestly, I didn't really get all that many answers for last week. So we will just repeat the question for this week. And once again, that is, do you think 800-volt systems will quickly prevail, or will we be driving 400-volt EVs for a long time? So submit your answers, please, via email to hello@ev-resource.com, or reply to the social media post, and I will read them out on next week's podcast. So that is your show for this week. Thank you, as always. Thank you very much for listening. If you have managed to get this far into it, please share this with your friends and anybody interested in electric vehicles. A big shout out to our Patreon executive producers. They are Rajiv Narayan and Greg Fuller. If you would be so kind and able, and it's entirely voluntary, but putting this podcast together is honestly a ton of work, and it would be appreciated if you could show or would show your support for this podcast. You can go to patreon.com/evresource. And I've got a few different tiers there, 3 different tiers set up, $1, $5, and $10. Every tier gets access to the, at this point, I think it's 14 issues of the EV Resource magazine. So whether you're at $1 or at $10, everybody gets the magazine of access to the magazine. It's not actually like a subscription to the magazine, but you have access to the entire catalog there. And always, I invite your feedback for this podcast. I want this to grow and be tailored specifically to you all who listen. So if you have any comments, please don't hesitate to drop me an email at the same email address, hello@ev-resource.com. Go to the YouTube videos this week. There isn't one because I don't have time to put it together. But the other YouTube videos, feel free to leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll get every video, every future podcast episode just delivered to you automatically. You'll get notified about it on YouTube or on the podcast apps. It'll just download automatically. And you don't have to worry about hunting around for the EV Resource podcast every week. And if you do want to listen to any of the shows, of course, you can do that via the podcast app that you are listening to this on, or you can go to the webpage, ev-resource.com, and to the podcast section, and they are all in there as well. So thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that you guys choose to spend your time listening to me ramble on. With that, I'm done. So I will catch you all next week. Thanks, guys.